Good afternoon, everyone. My name is David Kerr. I'm head of commercial relationships here at Buzzercott, the UK accounting firm that's the largest single office accounting firm here in the UK, and a member of the Prime Global Association of accounting firms around the world. We're joined here today by Adam and Pehal from Incorp in Malaysia, and we're here to talk about the challenges and the opportunities of doing business in Malaysia for UK companies looking to expand into Asia. Handing over now to Adam and Pehal to make an introduction to themselves.
Hi, David. Thanks a lot. Hi, guys. My name is Adam. I'm one of the directors of Incorp Malaysia, also known as We Corporate. And I have my partners, Pehal, here with me as well. Over to you, Pehal.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, David, and Adam as well. I'm Pehal. I'm one of the directors of Incorp Malaysia, also known as We Corporate. Nice to meet you all today. Over to you, David.
So as I was saying when we were speaking earlier, it's been a while since I visited Malaysia. So just wanted to get an update from your side about why is Malaysia such a great country for UK companies looking at expanding into Asia?
Sure. Maybe I can take it first and Pehal can chip in later. First of all, I think Malaysia is quite good markets for UK company if they would like to expand into this part of the region, Southeast Asia. Why would I say that? Is because first, we do have a fairly well-developed infrastructure, both hardware as well as software. We do have a fairly good digital and technology infrastructure as well. Besides that, I think our population size of 30 million is a very good testing ground for any companies who want to expand further into these regions. And the cost of setting up business in Malaysia is relatively reasonable. Pehal, you have anything to add on?
Yeah, also, David, I think one of the key advantages of Malaysia is we have, a relatively young population, right? Population size is less, 70% of them is below 40 years old. So this concur with Adam's message where the cost of doing business in Malaysia is relatively low because the workforce is young, it's well educated and skilled, and in terms of salary, it's relatively lower compared to the other countries surrounding Malaysia.
Okay, and there's obviously a lot of thriving industries in Malaysia, and from my time in KL, but it'd be interesting if you can give a brief overview of the e-commerce market in Malaysia.
Yeah, sure. So the e-commerce market in Malaysia has rapidly grown over the past few years, right? With Malaysia's internet economy expected to reach $35 billion by 2025. And that is also, linking it to the first point that we made, over 70% of the population are below 40 years old, right? So we have a very digitally savvy population. Based on our research, we noted that 88% of the total population in Malaysia are digital consumers today, versus the average 78% in Southeast Asia. So Malaysia is actually ahead of Indonesia and Singapore when it comes to this, right, in terms of digital consumers today. So the e-commerce industry is growing rapidly, and I think some of the main factors that we see that contributed to the growth of the e-commerce are the increased penetration rate of internet and mobile phone usage, right? The growing preference for cashless payments, and also the increasing number of e-commerce players in Malaysia.
Adam, anything to add from your side?
I think Pehal pretty much summarized all the pointers. Yeah.
Okay, and then on the e-commerce side of things, what are the trends you're seeing in sort of B2C world in Malaysia?
Yeah.
I'm just thinking about my observations, right? Based on our clients as well. Is a growing trend is there's no U-turns, right? Some of our clients who traditionally focusing on offline because of the COVID-19 for the last 2 years, they all been forced to go digitally, and which in the blessing in disguise because they are being forced to that directions. So in the past, we would say e-commerce, the founders or the owner of this business are relatively young populations. But we are seeing, people who are older, business owner, they also embrace the change as well. So it's going towards a very positive directions.
On that point of using mobile devices, what are the favorite mobile apps for Malaysian consumers?
Yeah, maybe I can add to that.
Yeah.
So, prior to COVID, right, there is a lot of transactions being done in cash in Malaysia, right? For example, I think since you've been to Malaysia, you've been to the hawker centers, right? The mamak stalls where people are paying in cash. But after the lockdown and the COVID pandemic, there's increased usage of e-wallet. So everybody prefers to pay using e-wallet nowadays. And some of the famous ones are GrabPay, Bruce, and I think we have more than 5 or 10 e-wallet providers now. and you can use e-wallet, QR pay on nearly everything, whenever you go out in Malaysia. I think also, just to add to the trend, because the past 2 years, the way of advertising has changed. People are using more social media marketing, influencer marketing. So we realize this trend has affected, and like what Adam mentioned, it allows business to reach their potential customers more effectively rather than through physical means.
Okay, and just thinking about our Buzzercot clients who are looking at expanding potentially into Malaysia, often the question I get asked when companies are looking at doing business in new markets, what are the challenges facing sort of UK businesses that are looking to set up in Malaysia?
I would say it's definitely to understand the demographics and what the customer wants in order you have the good product fit, right? I would say there's the question 101, the first questions that the UK companies need to have an answer to. But once you have that resolved, the infrastructure, the e-commerce ecosystem per se is fairly complete, right? You have the payment gateway in place, you have the if you're selling things physically, physical items, delivery is not an issue because we have a lot of logistic players for last mile delivery, etc. The main challenge is definitely what product or service that will sell in this market.
And what sort of leading on from that, what general advice would you give to those companies when they're expanding into Malaysia?
Yeah, you want to take this?
Yeah, sure. I think, like all businesses, not confined to Malaysia, you need to plan out your well-defined business model, right, and be clear about your target audience, your market trends, and your demand. In terms of setting up a company in Malaysia, actually, it's relatively straightforward, and people are usually very friendly and are always very helpful. So I think it's just more of having a very good business model, and if let's say you have previously done it in another country similar to Malaysia, most of the time it will work. And the other thing is also to do more research, right? To know the market and what the consumers in Malaysia are looking for. And because it's a relatively young economy, there is a lot of demand, right, for UK businesses to expand into Malaysia as well.
Any specific tips on the e-commerce front for those businesses, particularly for the Malaysian market?
Yes. One of the things I think is to understand the local business environment and also the regulation, right? Because you have to be on the right side of law. And what we will also recommend is to meet local companies and to partner with local companies, especially if you're expanding into Malaysia, because they can provide insights and guidance on doing business in Malaysia. And also, I think just for a point to promote Be Corporate as well, you can always contact us, and we'll be able to offer personalized consultation, right, for all businesses looking to expand in Malaysia.
I may add as well, let's say you are thinking of what kind of product or services. I think because traditionally we do have the historical link between Malaysia and UK, right? The populations do perceive British product or services to be of a better quality and premium. It carry a brand value in itself.
Yeah. I think always the comfort that can be provided from having a provider like yourselves is huge when companies and individuals are looking at exploring a new market. And just whilst we're talking about it, so could you run through quickly the services that We Corporate provide for a UK business that's setting up in Malaysia?
Sure. I think at the start, we can assist to set up the entity, which what we call Sendirian Berhad, or in translation to English would be private limited. So it's a limited equivalent of the UK. We can help on that, and we can be appointed as the company secretary as well, which is required by law. All right. Subsequently, we can assist on bookkeeping services. This is optional. So if the client has their in-house team, they can do it internally. But at the beginning, if let's say they want to outsource it out, we can assist on that. Third will be on payroll. So we can assist on payroll outsourcing. Fourth is the tax advisory and tax compliance. The last is what we call regulatory advisory. So it includes employment pass, necessary business license to start operating in Malaysia.
And David, also just to add on that, I know because of the number of partners that we work with in Malaysia, right? So although some of the services we don't offer, we work with a lot of partners, for example, logistics firm, right, that will be able to help with import-export. And also, if your clients require any product registration, right, anything relating to medical or pharmaceutical, although it's not something that we provide, it's something that we can link up with. And in addition to that, we are also working with a few banks in Malaysia. So it eases the customers, when it comes to Malaysia, because not only they are able to get the company set up, but we are able to link them to a lot of other partners or a lot of like local providers on services that we don't do, right? For example, banks and also logistics firms.
Well, that's great. I mean, so we'd think of you as a single point of contact on the ground for clients that are setting up in Malaysia.
Yes, that's right. We're usually the first point of contact.
Super. So Adam and Pei Hao, so question in terms of the setting up and the requirements for setting up for a UK business in Malaysia for that limited company. Are there other options? So can they set up a different type of entity, or is that the best type of company to set up for e-commerce purposes?
Yeah, usually, we will recommend a private limited company because that is the most efficient way for a foreign shareholder to enter into Malaysia. And you can have 100% foreign shareholding in Malaysia, right? There's no restrictions in nearly all of the industry. And also, all you need is actually a local resident director. You can have as many directors as you want. And also in terms of costs, that is one of the most cost-efficient structure to set up. Of course, there are a couple other structures, but that is usually more than 90% of the time, we will recommend private limited company for nearly all the companies setting up in Malaysia.
Okay, and then on you mentioned having the requirement of having a local director. So you couldn't just have UK nationals living overseas. You'd need a local director. Is that a service that We Corporate provide, or one of the other advisors that you utilize?
Yes, that is a service that we provide. So we are able to act as a nominee for a UK-based company into Malaysia and to help them set up. And once they are fully set up, what we usually do is to appoint, or what they can do is they can actually get their local director or their local staff in Malaysia to act as a director from then onward.
That's super. And I found from my personal experience of doing business in Asia, when UK companies coming to set up overseas, they would often like to send a sales director or an operations person from the UK over to the country of destination, in this case, Malaysia. What are the conditions and how easy is it to get a work permit and visas for family members, etc., to come over once the company is set up?
Yeah.
Maybe I can take this. Actually, the employment pass and the relevant dependent pass, I wouldn't say it's difficult, just that the process can take a while. It's between 6 to 9 months based on our experience, 6 to 9 months to get it from registrations until the expatriate can relocate to Malaysia. There'll be certain requirements depending on the shareholdings of the company. There will be more, it is quite detailed. So if any of the clients have questions, can directly email to us, then we can answer them via email. It'll be much easier.
Yeah, so if they're looking at Malaysia as a market, then actually your planning needs to start probably a year in advance.
Yeah,
for getting all your ducks in a row, so to speak.
Yeah.
When they are on the ground, are there restrictions or limitations of ratios of UK potential employees in the company to local residents?
There's no black and white guideline, but the most typical criteria they will use to increase your approval rate is, first of all, of course, the profile of the company. Second, the salary level that you offer to the expatriate, the academic qualifications of the candidates, and the working experience of the candidate. So it's not so much about the ratio between local and foreign expatriate.
Okay, that's good to know. On the setup, and you mentioned that you can provide the nominee director service, and I'm hoping it's easier in Malaysia to set up a bank account for your entity than it is in the UK, because it's still currently quite challenging to do that. Are there sort of local banks that you use, and what's the sort of timeline and that people should expect for setting up a bank account for the Malaysian entity?
Yeah, we do work with a few international banks who are able to, for example, let's say one of the UK directors are still based in the UK, they can open a bank account in UK. Basically, they just need to validate their identity at the UK branch of this international bank. So the one that we usually use could be UOB or OCBC, right? HSBC is one of them as well. But one thing to bear in mind is that the bank do change policy from time to time. So we always have to check in once we receive requests with the bankers whether it's still allowed. Yeah.
Yes, that sounds very familiar of the regulations occasionally changing. So in terms of the sort of filing requirements, it would be interesting to know, as a UK company where we have VAT and corporation tax, are there any additional filings and taxes that people need to consider when doing business in Malaysia?
Maybe I can take it first and Pei Hao can chip in. In terms of tax, I think there are three areas you have to take note of. The first is what we call sales and service tax, which is the equivalent of VAT or GST. That you only need to register, the company only registered after the income is more than 500,000 ringgit. Once you are registered, then you have to do the tax return every 2 months, bi-monthly. That's the first one. The second one is corporate tax. So corporate tax, usually it is due 8 months from the financial year end. Yeah. And for company that is more than, in general, we also have this pay as you earn scheme as well for company. So you actually have to estimate what you're going to make for the year upfront and pay installment throughout the financial year. And by the 8 months of the following year, you have to pay the difference or get a tax refund. And the third one is what we call employer tax return. The one is more like just filing a tax return to state that the total salary, etc., you pay to each staff for the previous calendar year. So these are the three main things.
That's good to know, particularly on the PAYE side.
Yeah.
So on that front, in terms of the thinking more on the day-to-day operations and the accounting side of things, I'm not familiar with Malaysian GAAP, but is it similar to UK or IFRS?
Yeah, you can take this.
Okay, so actually the accounting standards in Malaysia is very similar to UK, right? A lot of the large, if let's say you are a small medium enterprise, you will probably follow the Malaysian GAAP equivalent. And if let's say you are a fairly large company, you follow IFRS, right, which is the same as UK. The reporting timeline in Malaysia is usually once a year. So at the end of every year, if let's say you are above the audit exemption threshold, you will have to submit an audit report every 12 months annually to the government for filing. And this audit report will also be used to file your taxes. And the taxes are being filed once a year as well for corporate tax.
Okay. That's really useful to know, and I think certainly covers the questions that I have from my end, and of course there is an endless list of questions that clients always come to us with. So it's, as I said earlier, it's great to have you as a single point of contact on the ground. And I suppose the final question is, when's the best time of year to visit Malaysia? I know it can get quite warm, but is there the best time of year to visit, maybe around a Grand Prix or?
Yeah.
I think I know. I mean, it's best every day of the year. Because Malaysia's weather is pretty constant. We are warm all year round, so any time is good. But of course, if you're looking to go to certain attractions in Malaysia, for example, certain islands, right, to have a holiday after work, we recommend particularly during the middle of the year, during summer or during end of the year.
Well, that's great. So hopefully I'll be able to come out and visit soon. Thank you, Adam and Pehal, for your time today. It's been really interesting learning about doing business in Malaysia and the e-commerce market and the young population for whom the UK companies can look to hire when they set up over in Kuala Lumpur. So very much appreciate your time and look forward to speaking again soon.
Thank you, David.
Thank you, David.